She found out her husband was cheating on Christmas Eve. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was discovering he had spent 3 years building a
I
case
miss
to
you
take her
so
baby
much.
away,
I
documenting
can't
her
wait to see
anxiety,
you tomorrow.
turning her friends against her,
Merry Christmas,
planning
my
a
love.
future where she would lose everything while he walked away with their daughter. Sarah Mitchell was 8 months pregnant, had $200 to her name, and no one who believed her. Her
Sarah,
husband had
please,
the money,
you have to look
the
at
connections,
this. It explains
and the plan.
everything. He lied
She had
to us
nothing
both.
but screenshots on a phone he could track.
I saw
and a
him
truth
leave the
no
house
one
at
wanted to hear.
exactly 10:15 p.m.
What happens
holding
when a
the
woman
briefcase.
stops being afraid and starts fighting back?
I wish I hadn't.
What happens when the other woman shows up at her door with evidence? And what happens when his own mother decides to betray him in open court? This is not a story about a perfect victim. This is a story about a woman who made mistakes, trusted the wrong man, and almost gave up. But she did not. Stay with me until the end because, I promise you, the moment his mother takes that witness stand will leave you speechless. If stories like this speak to your heart, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another journey like Sarah's. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever trusted someone who turned out to be a complete stranger? Now let us begin. Snow fell softly over Columbus, Ohio on Christmas morning, coating the suburban streets in a quiet white blanket that made everything look peaceful, clean, perfect. Inside a modest 4-bedroom house on Maple Creek Drive, Sarah Mitchell sat alone at the kitchen table, 8 months pregnant, watching the flakes drift past the window. The Christmas tree glowed in the living room. Presents wrapped in red and gold paper waited beneath its branches. Coffee steam rose from her mug, the only warmth in a room that felt impossibly cold. Kevin's side of the bed had been empty since 4 in the morning. An emergency work call, he said. Quarterly projections that could not wait, he said. On Christmas. She had stopped questioning these explanations months ago, maybe years ago. The truth was she could not remember when she had stopped asking and started accepting. It happened so gradually, like water wearing down stone. One day you look up and realize half of yourself has eroded away. Sarah was 32 years old. She had been a kindergarten teacher once, before Kevin convinced her that their child deserved a full-time mother, before she gave up her career, her income, her independence, before she became someone who waited at kitchen tables for a man who was never there. She picked up her phone and scrolled through Facebook, a distraction, a way to avoid thinking about the silence that had become her constant companion. A mutual friend had posted photos from last night's company Christmas party. Sarah had not been invited. Kevin said spouses made things awkward at work events. She had believed him because believing him was easier than fighting. She scrolled through the album, smiling faces, champagne glasses, the conference room decorated with tinsel. And then she saw it. In the background of one photo, almost hidden behind a group of laughing co-workers, stood Kevin. His hand rested on the lower back of a younger woman. Both of them were laughing, standing too close, looking at each other the way people look when they share a secret. Sarah zoomed in on the image. Her chest tightened. Her breath came shorter. The woman was pretty, late 20s, dark hair, a red dress that hugged her figure. She looked at Kevin like he was the most fascinating person in the room, and Kevin looked at her the same way. Sarah stared at the photo for a long time. Her coffee grew cold. The snow kept falling. She told herself it was nothing. Kevin was friendly with everyone. That was just his personality. Charm was his currency at work. It did not mean anything. Stop being paranoid, she thought. You are always paranoid. Kevin says so all the time. She closed the app, set down the phone, pressed her hands against her swollen belly, and felt the baby kick. It is nothing, she told herself again. But somewhere deep inside, in a place she had learned to silence, she knew it was everything. Kevin came home at noon. He walked through the front door carrying a Starbucks cup and wearing the same clothes from yesterday. No apology, no explanation beyond a casual shrug. Sorry, babe, he said, dropping his keys on the counter. Henderson needed the quarterly projections finished before the holiday break. You know how it is. Sarah nodded. She did not know how it was. Kevin had stopped explaining his job to her years ago. He said she would not understand the business world. She had believed him because she always believed him. Did you eat? She asked. Grab something at the office. He kissed her cheek. His lips felt cool, distant. We should get ready. Mom's expecting us at 2. She watched him walk toward the bedroom, already loosening his tie. The same tie he had worn yesterday. The same tie from the photo. She opened her mouth to ask about the woman. About why he looked so happy standing next to someone who was not his wife. About why she felt like a stranger in her own marriage. But the words would not come. They never did anymore. Dinner at Kevin's parents' house was an exercise in performance. Sarah had learned the choreography years ago. Smile when spoken to, agree with Linda's opinions, laugh at Kevin's father's jokes, pretend everything was perfect, because perfect was all the Price family knew how to be. Kevin played his role flawlessly. He pulled out Sarah's chair. He rubbed her belly and told everyone how blessed they were. He called her honey and sweetheart and made sure her water glass was always full. Anyone watching would see a devoted husband, a man excited to become a father, a picture of suburban success. Only Sarah saw the truth, the way his eyes flickered to his phone every few minutes, the way his smile never quite reached his eyes when he looked at her, the way he performed love like an actor hitting his marks. His mother, Linda, watched Sarah with cool assessment throughout the meal. Linda had never liked her. Kevin's little project, she had called Sarah once, when she thought no one was listening. The girl from Ohio he married to prove he did not need family money. "You look tired, Sarah," Linda said between bites of glazed ham. "Are you sleeping enough? Stress is not good for the baby." "I am fine," Sarah started. "Just a little," Kevin interrupted, his hand landing on her shoulder. "She has been anxious lately. Pregnancy hormones, you know. I keep telling her to relax, but she worries about everything." Sarah's smile froze. She had not felt anxious until he said that. Now everyone at the table was looking at her like she was fragile, broken, a problem to be managed. "Have you considered talking to someone?" Linda asked. "A professional?" "My friend Margaret's daughter had terrible anxiety during her pregnancy. Therapy helped enormously." "That is a great idea," Kevin said before Sarah could respond. "Maybe we should set something up. Get you some support." "I do not need," Kevin squeezed her shoulder, just a little harder than necessary, just enough to remind her who controlled the narrative. "We will talk about it later," he said with a smile that looked like love but felt like a warning. Sarah nodded. She always nodded. The front door burst open, and Darlene Cooper swept into the dining room like a force of nature. Sarah's aunt wore a Christmas sweater that read "Santa saw your browser history" in bright red letters. Her gray hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she carried a casserole dish that smelled like tuna and desperation. "Sorry I am late," Darlene announced, setting the dish on the table without waiting for an invitation. "Traffic was murder, and some idiot in a BMW cut me off on the highway. Almost followed him home to give him a piece of my mind." Linda's face tightened with barely concealed distaste. "How festive." "Thanks. Got it at Walmart." Darlene dropped into an empty chair and grinned at Sarah. 50% off because someone returned it with a wine stain. Could not even tell after I bleached it. Kevin's eye twitched. He hated Darlene. She was low class, he always said. An embarrassment. A reminder that Sarah came from people who shopped at discount stores and said exactly what they thought without caring who disapproved. Sarah loved her for exactly those reasons. "Look at you," Darlene said, reaching over to pat Sarah's belly. "Big as a house, that baby is going to be a linebacker." The tension around the table was thick enough to cut. Linda smiled her frozen smile. Kevin's father suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. Kevin himself looked like he was calculating the exact moment he could politely ask Darlene to leave, but Sarah felt something loosen in her chest, something like relief, like being seen. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. Darlene winked at her. "Would not miss it for the world, sweetheart." Later that evening, while the family gathered in the living room for coffee and dessert, Sarah excused herself to use the bathroom. She walked down the hallway toward the powder room, but stopped when she heard Kevin's voice coming from the garage. The door was slightly open, just a crack, just enough for his words to slip through. "I told you not today." His voice was low, hushed, the kind of voice people used when they were saying things they did not want others to hear. "I know, I miss you too. Just a few more months, okay? After the baby comes, everything changes." Sarah's heart stopped. She stood frozen in the hallway, one hand pressed against the wall for support. Her breath came in shallow gasps. The baby kicked hard against her ribs. After the baby comes, everything changes. She knew she should confront him. Storm into that garage and demand an explanation. Scream, cry, fight for her marriage. But she did none of those things. Instead, she walked to the bathroom on trembling legs, locked the door behind her, and sat on the cold tile floor until she could breathe again. She told herself she misheard. She told herself he was talking to a client. She told herself anything except the obvious truth that was clawing at her chest. When she returned to the living room, Kevin smiled at her like nothing was wrong. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders. He kissed her temple and whispered that he loved her. And Sarah smiled back, because smiling was all she knew how to do anymore. That night, lying in bed beside a man who might be a stranger, Sarah stared at the ceiling and listened to Kevin's slow, steady breathing. He slept like a man with no conscience, no worries, no guilt. She placed her hand on her belly and felt the baby move. "I will figure this out," she whispered to her daughter. "I promise. I will figure this out." But she had no idea how. And deep down, in a place she was afraid to examine too closely, she was not sure she had the strength to traumon. The week between Christmas and New Year's felt like walking through fog. Sarah moved through her days on autopilot, performing the routines of a life that no longer felt like hers. She made breakfast, she cleaned the house. She smiled when Kevin came home and asked about his day. But underneath the performance, she was watching, noticing, gathering small truths like stones in her pocket. Kevin guarded his phone like it contained state secrets. He angled the screen away when she walked past. He took calls in the car, in the garage, in any room where she could not hear. He showered immediately when he got home from work, claiming gym sweat, though Sarah had never known him to exercise. She noticed the perfume first, not her perfume, something floral and expensive. It clung to his collar when he kissed her goodnight. When she asked about it, he laughed and said someone at work must have gotten too close at the copier. She noticed the late nights, the early mornings, the business trips that appeared on his calendar without warning. She noticed the way he looked at his phone and smiled, not the polite smile he gave her, a real smile, the kind that meant something. And she noticed the way he looked at her, like she was furniture, background scenery in a life he was building with someone else. On December 29th, Sarah gathered her courage and asked a question. They were sitting in the living room. Kevin scrolled through his laptop while a football game played on television. Sarah sat across from him, pretending to read a magazine, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Who is Megan Ross?" she asked. Kevin did not look up from his screen. "What?" "Megan, from the Christmas party." "Who is she?" "She is in marketing." "Wait, Bishwai." Sarah's throat felt tight. "You seem close, in the photos." Kevin finally looked up. His expression was not angry. It was worse. It was disappointed, exhausted. The face of a man who had explained something 1,000 times and could not believe he had to explain it again. "Here we go again," he said. "I am just asking. You are just asking like you just asked about Rachel from accounting last year, and my assistant before that." He closed his laptop with a sharp snap. "Sarah, this is exhausting. I saw a photo. You had your hand on her back. I had my hand on her back because we were posing for a picture. That is what people do at parties. They stand close. They smile. It does not mean I am sleeping with her." "I did not say You did not have to." He stood up, ran his hand through his hair, and looked at her with something that might have been pity. "This is your anxiety talking. You know that, right? This constant suspicion. This need to interrogate me about every woman I interact with at work." Sarah felt the ground shifting beneath her. A moment ago, she had been asking a reasonable question. Now, somehow, she was the problem. She was the one being unreasonable. "I am not interrogating," she said weakly. "I just wanted to know." Kevin walked toward her, sat on the arm of her chair, took her hand in his. His touch was gentle. His voice was soft. "I know pregnancy is hard," he said. "Your hormones are all over the place. You are not sleeping well. But you have to trust me. I would never hurt you. I would never hurt our family." He pressed his palm against her belly, smiled at her like she was precious, fragile, something to be handled with care. "Maybe we should talk to Pastor Whitfield about your anxiety," he continued. "Get you some support before the baby comes." I want you to feel better, Sarah. I want us to be happy. And there it was, the reframe. Suddenly, she was not a wife asking about her husband's suspicious behavior. She was a mentally unstable, pregnant woman who needed professional help. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw his words back in his face. She wanted to trust what she saw instead of what he told her. But he looked so sincere, so worried, so loving, and she was so tired of fighting. "You are right," she heard herself say. "I am sorry, I am just tired." Kevin kissed her forehead. "I know, baby. Let us get you to bed." He led her upstairs like a patient leading a child, tucked her in, brought her water and prenatal vitamins, kissed her goodnight, and told her everything would be better in the morning. After he left the room, Sarah lay in the darkness and felt something inside her crack. She was losing her mind. She was sure of it now. Kevin had been nothing but kind, nothing but patient, and she kept accusing him of horrible things based on nothing but a photograph and a feeling. Maybe he was right. Maybe she needed help. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but the image of his hand on Megan's back played on repeat behind her eyelids. And somewhere deep inside, in a voice that grew quieter every day, she knew what she knew. New Year's Eve arrived with freezing temperatures and the promise of fresh starts. Kevin said he had to work late. Year-end reports. Numbers that had to be finalized before midnight. Sarah stayed home. She ordered pizza. She watched the ball drop alone on a too-large couch in a too-quiet house. At midnight, she sent Kevin a text. "Happy New Year. Love you." He did not respond until 2 in the morning. Same. Crashed at the office. Home tomorrow. She stared at the message for a long time. Something about it felt wrong. The casualness, the distance, the way Happy New Year became just the word same. She could not sleep. At 3 in the morning, she picked up her phone and opened Instagram. She did not know what she was looking for. Maybe she did. She searched for Megan Ross, Columbus, Ohio. The profile was public. Pretty photos, travel pictures, brunch with friends, inspirational quotes about living your best life. And then Sarah found it. A New Year's Eve post, uploaded just hours ago. 2 champagne glasses clinking. A caption that read, "Starting the year right with my favorite person." In the reflection of the window behind Megan, Sarah could see a man's face. His features were blurry but unmistakable. Kevin. Her hands shook so badly she dropped the phone. It clattered against the hardwood floor, and the sound echoed through the empty house like a gunshot. She wanted to scream. She wanted to call him and demand the truth. She wanted to drive to wherever he was and make a scene that would shatter his careful performance forever. But she did not. She could not. Because she was 8 months pregnant. Because she had no income of her own. Because every bank account, every credit card, every financial resource existed in Kevin's name. Because he had spent years convincing her that she was paranoid, anxious, unstable. And a part of her still believed him. Because even if she confronted him, even if she had proof, where would she go? What would she do? How would she take care of a newborn with nothing but the clothes on her back and a phone full of screenshots? She was trapped. She had been trapped for years. She just had not seen the bars until now. At 4 in the morning, Sarah sat on the bathroom floor with her back against the cold tile wall. She pressed her palms against her belly and felt her daughter move inside her. "I am so sorry," she whispered through tears that would not stop. "I am so sorry, I do not know how to fix this." The baby kicked, hard, like a response, like a reminder that she was not alone. Sarah wiped her face with trembling hands. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw a woman she barely recognized. Tired, broken, afraid, but still there, still breathing, still fighting, even if she did not know what fighting meant anymore. She had no money, no power, no proof he would believe. She had nothing but the truth and a child who needed her to be stronger than she had ever been. Tomorrow, she told her reflection. Tomorrow I will figure something out. It was a promise she was not sure she could keep, but she made it anyway because promises were all she had left. The first week of January passed in a haze of false normalcy. Kevin came home every night now, attentive in a way that felt calculated rather than loving. He brought flowers. He rubbed her feet. He asked about the baby and talked about the nursery and acted like a man who had never whispered, "I miss you" to someone else on Christmas Day. Sarah played along because she did not know what else to do. She smiled when he smiled. She nodded when he spoke. She let him believe she had forgotten her suspicions, that his gentle reassurances had worked, that she was still the trusting wife he had married. But underneath her performance, she was awake for the first time in years. Every nerve ending alert, every instinct screaming. On January 3rd, Kevin left his laptop open. It was a careless mistake. The kind of mistake made by someone who believed they would never be caught. He had been working at the kitchen table, and Sarah called him for dinner. He closed the screen, but did not shut it, did not lock it. Just walked away, expecting everything to be exactly as he left it. Sarah was not snooping. She was walking past the table to get napkins. The laptop was right there. The screen had woken up, bright against the dim kitchen. An email was open. She saw the name first. Megan Ross, then the subject line. Our future. She should have kept walking. She should have pretended not to see. That was what the old Sarah would have done. The Sarah who was afraid of confrontation. The Sarah who believed her husband's explanations over her own eyes. But that Sarah had died on a bathroom floor on New Year's Eve. The woman standing in the kitchen now was someone different, someone tired of pretending. She looked at the email. I looked at the apartment, Megan had written. It is perfect for us. 2 bedrooms so Lily can visit on weekends. Can we sign the lease next week? I love you. Sarah read the words 3 times. Each reading felt like a knife sliding between her ribs. Lily. They had named their daughter Lily. It was Sarah's grandmother's name. She had chosen it months ago, shown Kevin the family photos, explained what it meant to her. And now he was using that name with his mistress, planning a future where their daughter was a weekend visitor, an obligation to be scheduled around his new life. Her hands were shaking, her vision blurred. But she did not cry. Something harder than tears had taken root in her chest. She picked up her phone and took a photo of the screen. Then another. Then she scrolled. More emails, weeks of them, months, plans to file for divorce once the baby is stable enough for shared custody, discussions about how to manage Sarah's mental health history in court, a forwarded document that made her stomach turn. It was her therapy records from 3 years ago when she had seen a counselor for what the paperwork called adjustment issues, when she had struggled with giving up her career, when Kevin had convinced her she needed help because she cried too much about losing her identity. He had kept those records. He had shared them with Megan. He had built a case against her, documented her weakness, prepared to use her own pain as a weapon. She scrolled further, found a thread between Kevin and someone named Henderson, his boss, talking about the apartment lease, talking about the timing of everything. Henderson wrote, just make sure you have your ducks in a row before you file. Courts favor mothers, but if you can establish she is unstable early, you have a better shot at primary custody. Kevin replied, already working on it. Got her therapist records, got the pastor on board, got 3 friends willing to testify. She has been erratic lately. By the time I file, she will look like a complete mess. Sarah stared at the screen until the words blurred together. She was not reading an affair anymore. She was reading a battle plan, a systematic destruction of her credibility, her relationships, her entire life. He was not just cheating, he was preparing to take everything. Kevin's voice came from the dining room. Babe, where are the napkins? She fumbled with her phone, took one more photo, closed the laptop screen. Right here, she called back. Her voice sounded normal. Calm, she did not recognize it as her own. At dinner, Kevin talked about work, about the nursery paint colors, about his mother's opinions on baby names. Sarah nodded and smiled and made all the right sounds. But inside, something fundamental had shifted. She was no longer a woman wondering if her husband was faithful. She was a woman who knew exactly who her husband was. And she was terrified. That night, while Kevin slept beside her, Sarah lay awake and tried to think. Her mind raced in circles that led nowhere. She could not confront him. He would deny everything. He would turn it around, make her the crazy one, maybe even accelerate his plans. She could not leave. She had no money, no income, nowhere to go. The joint account had $200 and some change. Everything else was in accounts she could not access. She could not tell anyone. Who would believe her? Kevin had spent years cultivating relationships, building trust, establishing himself as the reasonable one. She had spent years isolating herself, losing friends, becoming invisible. She had proof now, photos on her phone, but Kevin controlled their phone plan. He could probably see her data, her messages, everything. If he found out she knew, if he realized she had evidence, what would he do? The baby kicked. A reminder. A question. Sarah pressed her hand against her belly and whispered into the darkness, I will not let him take you. I do not know how yet, but I will figure it out. I promise. It was the second promise she had made in a week. This one felt different. This one felt like steel. The next morning, Sarah called in sick to her volunteer position at the church. She told Kevin she had a doctor's appointment, prenatal checkup, nothing to worry about. He nodded absently and left for work. The moment his car pulled out of the driveway, she started searching. Not the house. Kevin was too careful to leave anything physical lying around. Instead, she searched her own memory. Who could she trust? Who was outside Kevin's sphere of influence? Who would believe her without needing to be convinced? The answer came to her like a light switching on. Aunt Darlene. Darlene had never liked Kevin. She saw through his charm from the beginning, called him a used car salesman in a nice suit. Kevin hated her for it, discouraged Sarah from visiting, rolled his eyes whenever her name came up, which meant Darlene was exactly the person she needed. Sarah picked up her phone, hesitated. Kevin could see her call records. He might ask questions. She drove to a gas station 3 miles from her house, used the payphone outside, felt ridiculous, like a character in a bad spy movie, but also felt safer than she had in days. Darlene answered on the fourth ring. Hello, Aunt Darlene, it is Sarah. I need help. I need to leave. Can I stay with you? There was a pause. Then Darlene's voice came back, sharp and clear. Baby girl, you get in your car right now and you come to me. Do not tell him anything. Do not take anything he might notice missing. Just come, baby. Sarah felt tears burning her eyes. She blinked them back. I do not have money for gas. He controls everything. There is a Western Union on 5th Street. I am sending you $200 right now. Pick it up, fill your tank, and drive straight here. Do not stop for anything. Sarah gripped the phone so hard her knuckles turned white. Darlene, I am scared. I know, honey. That is why you are leaving. Now go. I will see you in 2 hours. The line went dead. Sarah stood in the cold January air, 8 months pregnant, about to run away from her entire life. She was terrified. But for the first time in years, she was also awake. And that made all the difference. The drive to Cleveland took 2 hours and 17 minutes. Sarah kept checking her rearview mirror, half expecting to see Kevin's black sedan following her. He did not appear. He was at work, blissfully unaware that his carefully controlled wife had finally slipped her leash. Darlene's apartment was on the second floor of an old building above a laundromat. The hallway smelled like fabric softener and ancient carpet. The wallpaper was peeling in the corners. A fluorescent light flickered overhead like a dying heartbeat. It was the most beautiful place Sarah had ever seen. Darlene opened the door before Sarah could knock. Her aunt was wearing sweatpants and a faded Cleveland Browns t-shirt. Her gray hair stuck up in 3 different directions. She looked like she had not slept in days. But her arms were open, and that was all that mattered. Get in here, Darlene said, pulling Sarah into a hug so tight it hurt. Lord Almighty, look at you. Lord Almighty, look at You are shaking like a leaf. I am okay. Sarah's voice cracked on the words. I am okay. No, you are not. But you will be. Darlene ushered her inside, closed the door, and locked 3 separate deadbolts. Come on, I made tea. The apartment was small, a living room that doubled as a dining room, a galley kitchen with yellowed appliances, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, everything worn but clean, decorated with dollar store finds and garage sale treasures. Darlene handed Sarah a mug of tea and sat across from her at the tiny kitchen table. Tell me everything, Darlene said. Do not leave anything out. So Sarah told. The Christmas party photo, the phone calls, the gaslighting, the emails she had discovered, the plan Kevin had been building to destroy her. Darlene listened without interrupting. Her expression grew darker with each detail. When Sarah finished, Darlene was silent for a long moment. Then she said a word that cannot be repeated, followed by another word that was even worse. I knew it, Darlene said. I knew that man was rotten the first time I met him. Too smooth, too polished. Nobody is that perfect unless they are hiding something ugly. What do I do? Sarah asked. I have nowhere to go. I have no money. I have no proof he will actually believe. You have those photos on your phone? Sarah nodded. Then you have proof. Maybe not enough for court yet, but enough to know you are not crazy. Darlene reached across the table and squeezed Sarah's hand. First thing we do is get you safe. You stay here as long as you need. Second thing, we figure out what he is really hiding. A man does not build a case like that unless he has something to protect. What do you mean? I mean his finances, honey. Men like Kevin, they always think they are smarter than everyone else. They hide money. They move assets. They set up accounts their wives do not know about. If we can prove he has been lying about money, that changes everything. Sarah shook her head. I do not know anything about his finances. He handles everything. I do not even know what he makes. Darlene's eyes hardened. Then that is what we need to find out. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt something like hope. Small and fragile, but real. She was not alone anymore. She had someone in her corner. Maybe that would be enough. It was not enough. Kevin noticed she was gone by 3 in the afternoon. Sarah had forgotten about the credit card. She had used it to buy gas, just a few dollars to top off her tank, and the notification went straight to Kevin's phone. Her own phone started buzzing around 3:30. She ignored the first call. The second, the third, then the text started. Ding. Where are you, baby? I am worried. Please call me. Sarah, this is not funny. I came home and you were gone. If you do not respond in 1 hour, I am calling the police and reporting you missing. Think about what that looks like for custody. Sarah stared at the last message. Her blood turned to ice. He is threatening me, she whispered. He is actually threatening me. Darlene read the message over her shoulder. Her jaw tightened. Do not respond, Darlene said. Let him sweat. But if he calls the police, he will not. Not yet. He does not want cops involved any more than you do. This is a power play. He wants you scared. I am scared. Darlene squeezed her shoulder. Good. Scared keeps you sharp, but do not let scared make you stupid. They spent the next hour planning. Darlene helped Sarah create a new email account, one Kevin did not know about. They transferred the photos from her phone to the cloud. They made a list of everything she knew about Kevin's finances, which was almost nothing. By 6 o'clock, Sarah was starting to believe she might actually get through this. She was safe. She had evidence. She had a plan. Then someone knocked on the door. Darlene froze. Sarah's heart stopped. Another knock, louder, then Kevin's voice. Sarah? I know you are in there. Your car is in the parking lot. Come on, baby. Let us talk about this. Sarah looked at Darlene with wide, terrified eyes. How did he find me? She whispered. Darlene's face was grim. He must have tracked your phone. A third knock, more insistent. Sarah, please. Whatever is wrong, we can fix it. Just come outside and talk to me. Behind Kevin's voice, Sarah heard another sound. Another man speaking in low tones. She crept to the window and peered through the curtain. Kevin stood on the landing. Beside him, wearing a concerned expression in a wool overcoat, was Pastor James Whitfield. Her stomach dropped. He brought the pastor, she said. He is making this into an intervention. Darlene looked out the window. Her expression shifted from concern to fury. That manipulative piece of work. Kevin's voice came again, louder now. Darlene, I know you think you are helping her, but Sarah is not well. She has been struggling with her mental health. Running away while pregnant is not rational behavior. Darlene stalked to the door and yanked it open. She did not invite them inside. She stood in the doorway like a bouncer at the world's most protective nightclub. You need to leave, Darlene said. Pastor Whitfield stepped forward with his hands raised in a calming gesture. Mrs. Cooper, we are just worried about Sarah. She left home without telling anyone. That is not like her. Darlene did not move. What is not like her is waking up and realizing her husband has been lying to her face for years. That takes some adjusting. Kevin peered past Darlene into the apartment. Sarah shrank back into the shadows. Sarah, please. His voice was soft, gentle, the voice of a man who only wanted to help. Whatever you think you saw, whatever you think you know, we can talk about it. But running away is not the answer. Pastor Whitfield nodded. Sarah, your husband loves you. He drove 2 hours in the cold because he was terrified something happened to you. That is not the behavior of a man with something to hide. Sarah felt her resolve wavering. They both sounded so reasonable, so concerned, and she was so tired, so scared, so desperate for someone to tell her everything would be okay. Maybe she had overreacted. Maybe the emails were not as bad as she thought. Maybe Kevin had an explanation for everything. She took a step toward the door. Darlene caught her arm. "Do not," Darlene whispered. "Do not let them talk you out of what you know." Kevin's expression flickered. Just for a second, a flash of something cold behind his eyes. And suddenly Sarah remembered the email. Henderson's advice. Her therapy records forwarded to his mistress. The apartment lease with 2 bedrooms so Lily can visit on weekends. This was not concern. This was strategy. Kevin was not here to reconcile. He was here to regain control. "No," Sarah said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I am not coming with you." Kevin's mask slipped further. "Sarah, I saw the emails, Kevin. I know about Megan. I know about the apartment. I know you have been building a case to take my daughter away from me." The pastor's expression shifted to confusion. "Kevin, what is she talking about?" "She is confused," Kevin said quickly. "The pregnancy hormones, the stress. She has been saying things that do not make sense." "I have screenshots," Sarah said. "I have proof." Silence. Kevin's face went very still. Then he smiled. That gentle, patient, loving smile that had fooled her for years. "Sarah, honey, you know how easy it is to fake screenshots. You know how your anxiety makes you see things that are not there." He turned to the pastor. "This is exactly what I was worried about. She needs help, professional help." Pastor Whitfield looked from Kevin to Sarah. His expression was troubled. "Sarah, maybe you should come back and we can sort this out together. If there has been a misunderstanding." "It is not a misunderstanding," Sarah said. But her voice had lost its certainty. The way both men were looking at her, with concern and pity and gentle condescension, made her feel like she was drowning. Kevin took a step forward. His hand reached out. "Come home," he said softly. "Please, for our daughter." And because she was exhausted, because she was 8 months pregnant in Terramud and had been fighting alone for so long, because part of her still wanted to believe the man she married was real. Sarah walked out the door. Darlene tried to stop her, grabbed her arm, said words that Sarah barely heard through the fog of resignation. It was easier to believe, easier to hope she was wrong about everything. The drive home was silent. Kevin kept one hand on the steering wheel and one hand on her knee. He did not yell. He did not accuse. He just drove, radiating patience and concern and love. And Sarah sat in the passenger seat and wondered if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. A week passed, 7 days of careful normalcy. Kevin was attentive, sweet. He brought her breakfast in bed and rubbed her swollen feet and talked about baby names with enthusiasm that almost seemed real. He also watched her constantly, not aggressively, not obviously, but Sarah felt his attention like a weight on her shoulders. He knew where she was at all times. He checked her phone when he thought she was sleeping. He asked casual questions that were not casual at all. She was back in her cage, and this time the bars were visible. On January 10th, everything changed. Kevin was at work. Sarah was lying on the couch, pretending to nap, actually thinking about how to access his hidden accounts, about whether Darlene was right that men like Kevin always hid money, about what she could possibly do with no resources and no allies. Someone knocked on the front door. Sarah froze. Kevin never had visitors during the day. Neither did she, not anymore. He had slowly cut her off from everyone she knew, made her social calendar revolve entirely around him. She walked to the door, looked through the peephole, and saw Megan Ross standing on her porch. Sarah's heart slammed against her ribs. For a long moment, she did not move. Could not move. Another knock. Softer this time. "Mrs. Price," Megan's voice was muffled through the door. "Please, I need to talk to you." Every instinct screamed at Sarah to walk away, to pretend she was not home, to avoid whatever fresh hell this conversation would bring. But something else, something that had been growing stronger since New Year's Eve, made her reach for the doorknob. She opened the door. Megan stood there in a designer coat and expensive boots. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail. Her eyes were red and swollen. mascara smudged in the corners. She had been crying. She looked like she had been crying for days. "Can I come in?" Megan asked. Sarah should have said no, should have slammed the door in this woman's face, should have screamed at her for destroying her marriage. Instead, she stepped aside. Megan walked into the living room like she was afraid the floor might collapse. She perched on the edge of the couch and twisted her hands in her lap. Sarah sat across from her, waited. The silence stretched for almost a minute before Megan spoke. "I did not know," she said. Her voice cracked on the words. "I swear to God, I did not know." "Did not know what?" "That you were still together." Megan wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "He told me you were separated. He told me you only stayed together for the pregnancy. He told me you had mental health problems and he was scared to leave because you might hurt yourself." Sarah stared at her. The words did not make sense. They made perfect sense. "He told you I was unstable." Megan nodded. "He said you were paranoid, delusional. He said he had documented everything in case he needed to protect the baby." She let out a bitter laugh. "I believed him because I wanted to, because he made me feel special and chosen, and I was so desperate to be loved that I ignored every red flag." Sarah did not know what to feel. Anger at this woman who had helped destroy her marriage. Pity for someone who had been manipulated just as thoroughly as she had. Something in between that had no name. "Why are you here?" Sarah asked. "Because I found out the truth." Megan pulled a tissue from her pocket and dabbed her eyes. "Last week, I saw your Facebook. You posted a photo of you and Kevin at church. You looked happy. Together, not separated at all." Sarah remembered that photo. Kevin had insisted on it, wanted to prove to their social circle that everything was fine. She had smiled for a camera while her heart broke. "I confronted him," Megan continued. "I asked why you looked like a happy couple if you were supposed to be separated. And he said I was misunderstanding. He said you were performing for social appearances. He said I should trust him. The same words he always said to Sarah. The same deflection. The same reframe. But this time there is someone else," Megan said. Her voice hardened. "I realized he used those exact same words on me that he probably used on you. And suddenly everything looked different." Sarah leaned forward. "Someone else? He has been distant lately, taking calls in other rooms, coming home late." She laughed bitterly. "The same things I probably did to help him lie to you. I started paying attention. I found receipts. I found messages. He is already moving on to someone new." Sarah felt sick, but she also felt something else. A strange kinship with this woman she should hate. "Why tell me this?" Sarah asked. "What do you want?" Megan reached into her purse and pulled out a small USB drive. She set it on the coffee table between them. "Everything," Megan said. "Texts, emails, voicemails. He sent me copies of your therapy records. I did not ask for them, but he sent them to prove you were unstable. I have records of everything he said about your marriage, about his plans, about what he was going to do after the baby was born." Sarah stared at the USB drive like it might explode. "I am not doing this to be your friend," Megan continued. "I am doing this because if I do not, I am as bad as him." She stood up, gathered her coat around herself. "I am sorry, Sarah. I am so sorry for what I did. I cannot undo it, but I can give you the ammunition to fight back." Sarah reached for the USB drive. Her hand trembled. "Thank you," she whispered. It was not enough. It was too much. It was the only thing she could say. Megan walked to the door, paused with her hand on the knob. "He is never going to stop," Megan said. "Men like Kevin do not stop. They just find new victims." She opened the door. "Make sure you are not one of them." Then she was gone. Sarah sat alone in her living room holding the USB drive that contained her freedom. Or her destruction. Or both. She thought about Darlene's words. Men like Kevin always think they are smarter than everyone else. But Kevin had not counted on his mistress having conscience. He had not counted on the women he hurt comparing notes. He had not counted on anyone being brave enough to hand his secrets to his wife. Sarah plugged the USB drive into her laptop, started reading. By midnight, she had everything she needed. Proof of the affair. Proof of his plans to take custody. Proof that he had been building a case against her mental health for years. And something else. Something she had not expected. References to a separate account. A bank she had never heard of. Money that existed somewhere outside their marriage. Kevin had hidden assets. And now Sarah knew where to look. She saved everything to her secret cloud account. Then she deleted her browsing history, cleared the drive, and hid it in the back of her underwear drawer. For the first time since Christmas, Sarah smiled. The game had just changed. Sarah did not confront Kevin with her new evidence. She had learned that lesson the hard way. Instead, she did something much more dangerous. She waited. For 2 days, she played the role of dutiful wife. She cooked dinners and folded laundry and smiled at Kevin's jokes. She let him believe she had accepted her place, that she had given up. Meanwhile, she planned. She could not go back to Darlene. Kevin would expect that. She needed somewhere safe, somewhere outside his network of surveillance, somewhere he would not think to look. She remembered her old college roommate, Beth. They had been close once, inseparable for 4 years. Then Sarah married Kevin and the friendship faded. He said Beth was a bad influence, too wild, too independent, too likely to encourage Sarah's worst instincts. She had believed him then. Now she understood. Beth worked as a paralegal in Pittsburgh. Not a lawyer, but someone who understood the legal system. Someone who might know how to turn evidence into action. Sarah found her number in an old address book Kevin did not know existed. Called from a gas station payphone. Felt ridiculous and desperate and utterly determined. Beth answered on the second ring. Sarah Mitchell? Holy cow, it has been forever. Are you okay? Sarah's voice cracked. No, I am not. I need help. 45 minutes later, Sarah was driving to Pittsburgh with a bag packed in the trunk. She left Kevin a note saying she needed space, that she was staying with a friend, that she would be in touch. She knew it would not buy much time, but she did not need much. Beth's apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old brownstone near the university. She shared it with a cat named Mr. Pickles, who was missing half an ear and all of his good manners. Beth herself was exactly as Sarah remembered. Tall, loud, with hair dyed 3 different colors and opinions on everything. She pulled Sarah into a bone-crushing hug the moment she opened the door. Get inside, Beth commanded. You look like death warmed over. Thanks, Sarah managed. I mean it lovingly. Sit down. I am making you tea. Over the next 2 hours, Sarah told Beth everything. The affair, the gaslighting, the emails, the USB drive from Megan, the hidden accounts she suspected but could not prove. Beth listened with increasing fury. By the end, she was pacing the living room like a caged animal. That absolute piece of garbage, Beth said. I always knew there was something wrong with him. Nobody is that charming without being a sociopath. What do I do? Sarah asked. I have evidence, but is it enough? Beth stopped pacing, sat down across from Sarah with the expression of someone about to deliver hard news. Here is the problem, Beth said. Ohio is a no-fault divorce state. Infidelity does not matter much legally. The cheating might help emotionally, make him look bad to a judge, but it is not a silver bullet. Sarah's heart sank. So the evidence is useless? Not useless. Different. Beth leaned forward. What matters in Ohio is finances. If he has been hiding assets, lying about income, financially abusing you, that is where you can hurt him. That is where prenups get voided and custody gets questioned. He controls everything, Sarah said. I do not even know what he actually earns. Then that is what we need to find out. Beth grinned. And lucky for you, I work for a family law firm with the best forensic accountant in the state. The next morning, Beth's firm agreed to take Sarah's case pro bono. She was exactly the kind of sympathetic client they needed. A pregnant woman escaping an abusive marriage. A story that would play well in court and in the press. The attorney was a sharp woman named Catherine who wore pantsuits like armor and asked questions like weapons. The forensic accountant was a 62-year-old man named Gerald who wore suspenders and spoke entirely in numbers. Your husband reported income of $87,000, Gerald said, after reviewing the documents Sarah had gathered. But his spending patterns suggest income of approximately $240,000 to $280,000. The delta is significant. The delta, Sarah repeated. The gap. The lie. The thing that is going to bury him in court. Sarah felt something crack open in her chest. Hope. Real hope for the first time in months. Gerald traced Kevin's finances through 3 days of intensive research. What he found was damning. A hidden bank account containing $180,000. Stock options that were never disclosed in their prenuptial agreement. A rental property, On my different property, the apartment Kevin had leased for Megan, held in his name alone. Evidence of systematic asset transfers that began 6 months before Sarah discovered the affair. He was preparing to leave you, Catherine explained, moving money where you could not find it, building a war chest for the divorce he planned to file on his terms. Sarah stared at the documents spread across the conference table. Numbers and accounts in shell companies. A paper trail of betrayal. Can you prove this? Sarah asked. In court, Catherine smiled. Not just prove it, we can use it. In Ohio, hiding marital assets is fraud. It voids prenups, affects property division, and more importantly for you, it affects custody. Custody, the word that mattered most. If we can show that Kevin has been systematically deceiving you, hiding his true financial picture, Catherine continued, we can argue that he cannot be trusted to act in good faith as a co-parent. That makes your case for primary custody much stronger. Sarah's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table. When can we file? She asked. Catherine exchanged a glance with Gerald. Both of them smiled. How does tomorrow sound? The paperwork was filed the next day. Emergency motion for temporary spousal support. Request to freeze marital assets pending investigation. Preliminary custody arrangement granting Sarah primary physical custody until the hearing. Kevin was served at his office, in front of his colleagues, at 3:27 in the afternoon. Sarah was not there to see it, but Catherine reported that he turned very pale. That night, for the first time in months, Sarah slept without nightmares. She was safe. She had a lawyer. She had evidence. She was going to win. She had no idea how wrong she was. The counterpunch came 3 days later. Sarah was at Beth's apartment, feeling almost optimistic, when Catherine called with news that made her blood freeze. Kevin filed a response, Catherine said. Her voice was carefully neutral. You need to come to the office, now. 20 minutes later, Sarah sat in the conference room, staring at documents that dismantled her hope piece by piece. Kevin's lawyer had filed a countermotion claiming that Sarah abandoned the marital home while pregnant, that she had a documented history of mental health issues, that she was being manipulated by her friend Beth, who had a quote-unquote grudge against Kevin, that she posed a risk to the unborn child and should be evaluated by a court-appointed psychiatrist. He attached letters of support. Pastor Whitfield testified to Sarah's erratic behavior. 3 of Sarah's former friends, women she had lost touch with because Kevin said they were toxic, provided statements about her paranoia and instability. And the most devastating blow, Kevin's declaration claimed he feared for his wife's mental state and the safety of their unborn daughter. He was requesting that the court mandate a psychiatric evaluation before any custody decisions were made. This is his playbook, Catherine said. Make you look unstable, make himself look reasonable. But I am not unstable, Sarah protested. Her voice was rising. I was right all along. Everything I suspected was true. I know that, Catherine said gently. You know that, but the judge does not know you. The judge just sees paperwork. And right now, his paperwork tells a more compelling story than yours. Sarah stared at the documents. Some of Kevin's claims were lies, but some were not. She did have anxiety. She did struggle after leaving her job. She did send Kevin paranoid texts when she first suspected the affair. Texts that he had saved. Texts that now painted a picture of a woman unraveling. He spent years building this, Sarah whispered. I had weeks. Catherine nodded. That is the reality we are working with, but we are not done yet. The forensic evidence is still strong. The hidden assets are still provable. We just need to present a counter-narrative that is more convincing than his. How do we do that? Catherine paused, considered. Her expression was less certain than Sarah had ever seen it. We need more evidence, Catherine said finally. Something that proves his pattern of deception beyond the finances. Character witnesses who can testify to his manipulation. Documentation that he has done this before. Before Sarah could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Sarah, I need to talk to you. It is urgent. This is Linda Price. Sarah stared at the message. Kevin's mother. The woman who had never liked her. The woman who called her Kevin's little project. What could Linda possibly want? She showed Catherine the text. Catherine raised an eyebrow. Interesting, Catherine said. Could be useful. could be a trap. Either way, it is worth exploring. That evening, Sarah met Linda at a coffee shop downtown. She chose a public place, sat near the window, and kept her phone recording in her pocket. Linda arrived wearing a camel hair coat and an expression Sarah had never seen before. She looked old, tired, like something inside her had broken. "Thank you for meeting me," Linda said. She did not sit down immediately, just stood there looking at Sarah like she was seeing her for the first time. "I know I have not been kind to you. I know I enabled my son's behavior. I am not here to make excuses." "Then why are you here?" Sarah asked. Linda finally sat, folded her hands on the table, took a breath. "Because I watched my son try to take your baby from you," she said quietly. "And I recognized what I was seeing." Sarah did not understand. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I have seen this before." Linda's voice was barely above a whisper. 35 years ago, when my husband did the same thing to me." The words hung in the air. Sarah felt the room tilt. Linda continued, each word heavy with decades of suppressed truth. "My husband cheated on me for 20 years. He hid money in accounts I never knew existed. He convinced everyone I was fragile and neurotic and unfit to make decisions about my own children." She laughed bitterly. "Sound familiar?" Sarah could not speak. "I stayed because I was afraid, because I believed him when he said I was the problem, because leaving seemed impossible." Linda looked at Sarah with eyes that were bright with unshed tears. "I wasted my entire life being Mrs. Price. I will not let you make my mistake." "Why are you telling me this?" Sarah managed. "Because I have something you need." Linda reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "Something that will destroy my son's case, and probably my relationship with him forever." Sarah took the envelope. Inside were documents, bank statements, photographs, legal papers, and a police report from 1992. "What is this?" Sarah asked. Linda took a breath. "Before you, there was a woman named Jennifer. They were engaged for 8 months. When she tried to leave him, he did exactly what he is doing to you. Made her look crazy, turned everyone against her, filed restraining orders claiming she was dangerous." Sarah scanned the documents. Jennifer Hartwell. A restraining order that was later dismissed. A civil suit that was settled out of court. "She tried to fight back," Linda said. "She lost. He was too prepared, too connected, too believed. She had a breakdown afterward. Last I heard, she was living in a care facility." Sarah felt sick. This was the future Kevin had planned for her. A breakdown, a facility, a warning to any woman who dared challenge him. "Why did you not say anything?" Sarah whispered. "All these years, because I was a coward." Linda's voice cracked. "Because it was easier to pretend my son was good than to face what he really was. Because I am his mother and I failed him somehow, and admitting that felt like dying." She wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. "But watching him do this to you, watching him try to take that baby, something finally broke inside me. I cannot change the past, but I can give you a weapon he does not know exists." Sarah looked at the documents again. A pattern of behavior, a previous victim, evidence that Kevin had done this before. "This changes everything," Sarah breathed. "I hope so," Linda said, "for your sake and for that baby's." Sarah met her mother-in-law's eyes, saw something there she had never noticed before. Grief, regret, the weight of a lifetime spent silent. "Thank you," Sarah said. It was not enough. It was all she had. Linda nodded, then she stood, gathered her coat, and walked away without looking back. Sarah sat alone in the coffee shop, holding the key to her freedom, feeling the tide finally beginning to turn. 3 days before her due date, Sarah went into labor. It started at 2 in the morning, a contraction that wrapped around her lower back and squeezed until she could not breathe. Then another, then another. She was at Beth's apartment. Beth drove her to the hospital, calling Catherine on the way. This was it. The baby was coming, 3 weeks early, but apparently ready. The hospital was a blur of fluorescent lights and hurried questions. Sarah was admitted, hooked to monitors, told that everything looked normal. Early labor could take hours. Beth stayed with her, held her hand through contractions, made terrible jokes about how the baby was already showing Kevin's timing by arriving exactly when it was most inconvenient. Then Kevin arrived. He had been notified. Legally, they had to. He was still her husband, still the baby's father, still a man with rights that had not yet been revoked. He swept into the labor room with flowers and concern, the picture of a devoted husband rushing to his wife's side. The nurses looked at him with sympathy. Such a worried father, such a stressful situation. Beth tried to block him. There were words exchanged. A nurse intervened. Kevin ended up at Sarah's bedside, holding her hand through contractions, whispering words of encouragement that felt like threats. "It is going to be okay," he murmured as another contraction gripped her. "We are going to get through this together." She wanted to scream at him, to throw his hand away, to tell everyone in that room exactly what he was. But she was in labor. She was terrified. And making a scene would only prove his narrative true. So she said nothing. She endured. She focused on the baby coming and tried to block out everything else. Lily was born at 7:42 in the morning, 6 pounds, 3 ounces. Perfect and beautiful and screaming her arrival to the world, Sarah held her daughter for the first time and felt something crack open in her chest. Something so overwhelming it did not have a name. Love, fear, hope, desperation. All of it tangled together into a single moment that changed everything. She looked into Lily's unfocused eyes and made a silent promise. "I will protect you. No matter what, I will protect you." She did not know that in less than 2 hours, that promise would be tested beyond anything she could imagine. The social worker arrived at 9:15, a tired woman in a cardigan, carrying a clipboard and wearing an expression of professional sympathy. "Mrs. Price, I'm so sorry to disturb you, but there has been a motion filed." Sarah's blood turned to ice. "What kind of motion?" The social worker looked at her clipboard, then at Kevin, who stood in the corner looking appropriately concerned, then back at Sarah. "Your husband filed an emergency custody petition this morning," the social worker said. "He claims you are mentally unstable and may pose a risk to the newborn. The court has granted him temporary custody pending a psychiatric evaluation. You have supervised visitation rights until the hearing." The words did not make sense. Sarah heard them, understood them intellectually, but her brain refused to process what they meant. "He filed this morning, while I was in labor?" The social worker looked uncomfortable. "I understand this is difficult timing, but the court found the petition credible enough to act immediately." Credible. Kevin had made his case credible while she was giving birth. He had timed it perfectly. She was exhausted, vulnerable, unable to fight back. And he had struck. "You cannot do this," Sarah said. Her voice was rising. She could feel hysteria building in her chest, and she knew that showing emotion would only prove Kevin right. "You cannot take my baby." "Ma'am, please try to stay calm." "Stay calm?" Sarah was crying now. She could not stop. "They are taking my baby, and you are telling me to stay calm." Kevin stepped forward. He put his hand on her shoulder. She flinched away. "Sarah, sweetheart," he said softly. "I know you are upset, but this is for Lily's safety. You have been struggling. You need help. Once you get the evaluation, once you are stable, we can figure this out together." He sounded so reasonable, so loving. The nurses in the hallway were watching with pity. "Poor man," their faces said, "dealing with such a difficult situation." Beth burst into the room. She had been on the phone with Catherine. Her face was white. "Sarah, Catherine is filing an emergency response. We are going to fight this." But it was already too late. The social worker was explaining the process, the transfer of custody, the visitation schedule, the requirements Sarah would need to meet before she could be alone with her daughter again. A nurse came to take Lily. "No," Sarah whispered. She clutched her baby tighter. "Please, no." "Mrs. Price, I understand how hard this is." The social worker's voice was gentle but firm. "But I need you to cooperate. Resisting will only make things worse." "Worse? How could things be worse?" Kevin watched from the corner, his face arranged in perfect sorrow, his eyes betraying nothing. And Sarah understood, with terrible clarity, that he had planned this from the beginning. Every move, every manipulation, every piece of evidence he had gathered over years. He had never intended to share custody. He had intended to win. She let them take Lily. What choice did she have? Fighting would only prove his point, only make her look unstable. The nurse carried her daughter out of the room. Sarah watched through blurring tears as her baby disappeared down the hallway. Kevin followed. At the door, he turned back. "I am sorry it had to be this way," he said. "I just want what is best for our daughter." Then he was gone. Sarah lay alone in the hospital bed, arms empty, listening to her baby cry somewhere down the hall. She had never felt pain like this. Not physical pain, though her body ached from labor. This was something deeper, something that reached into her chest and tore her apart from the inside. She had lost. After everything, after all her planning and evidence and hope, she had lost. Kevin had won. She stared at the ceiling and felt something inside her begin to give way. The exhaustion, the despair, the months of fighting against someone who had every advantage. Maybe he was right. Maybe she could not win. Maybe she should just accept defeat and hope for the scraps of motherhood he chose to leave her. Maybe giving up was easier than fighting. The thought settled over her like a cold fog. Then, unbidden, she remembered something. A conversation with Darlene months ago that she had almost forgotten. "Leaving is hard," Darlene had said, "but staying gone when he begs, when people judge, when you are scared and broken alone, that is the hard part. That is where most women break. That is where most women break." Sarah looked at her empty arms, felt the phantom weight of her daughter, heard Lily's cries echoing in her memory. Was she going to be one of those women? The ones who broke? Who gave up? Or was she going to be something else entirely? She thought of her daughter, of the life Lily would have with Kevin as her only real parent, of the lies she would be told about her mother, of the manipulation she would learn as normal. "No," Sarah whispered. She pushed herself up in the hospital bed. Her body screamed in protest. She did not care. "I am not done," she said to the empty room. "I am not giving up." She reached for her phone, called Darlene. "They took her," Sarah said when her aunt answered. "Kevin took my baby." There was a long pause. Then Darlene's voice came back, steel wrapped in love. "Then we take her back. Whatever it takes, we take her back." Sarah closed her eyes, felt something shift inside her. The despair was still there. The fear was still there, but underneath it something else was growing. Something hard and bright and absolutely unbreakable. She was going to fight. Not because she was strong, not because she was brave, but because her daughter needed her to be. And that was enough. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of Sarah's life. She had supervised visitation with Lily, 30 minutes, 3 times a week in a room with a stranger watching. She could hold her daughter but not nurse her. She could sing to her but not take her home. She could count every eyelash and memorize every finger and know that at the end of each visit, someone would take Lily away. But she did not break. She could not afford to. Catherine worked around the clock building their case. Gerald dug deeper into Kevin's finances and found more hidden accounts, more transferred assets, more evidence of systematic fraud. The documents Linda had provided added a pattern of behavior that painted a devastating picture. And then Gerald found something else, something that changed everything. "I need you to sit down," Catherine said when she called Sarah to the office. Sarah sat. Her heart was already racing. "Gerald found a life insurance policy," Catherine said carefully. "Kevin took it out on you 2 years ago, $500,000. Sarah blinked. "That is not unusual. Married couples have life insurance. The beneficiary was originally Kevin," Catherine continued, "but 6 months ago he changed it. The new beneficiary is his mother." The words took a moment to land. Then they hit like a sledgehammer. "His mother? Why would he?" Catherine's expression was grim. "We do not know for certain. It could be estate planning. It could be innocent. But combined with everything else," Sarah whispered, "combined with the way he documented my mental health, combined with the custody battle, combined with everything else, it looks like preparation," Catherine finished. "For a future where you are not around." Sarah felt the room spin. She gripped the edge of her chair. "You think he was planning to?" She could not finish the sentence. "I think he was preparing for every possibility," Catherine said. "And I think we need to present this to the judge." The hearing was scheduled for January 25th, 2 weeks after Lily's birth, 2 weeks of preparation, of documents, of strategy. Kevin arrived at the courthouse with his lawyer, his mother, and the confidence of a man who expected to win. He smiled at Sarah across the hallway, a smile that said he had already calculated every outcome. Sarah sat with Catherine, Gerald, and Beth. Darlene was in the gallery, wearing her most respectable cardigan and an expression of barely contained fury. The judge was a woman in her 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes. She reviewed the mountain of documents both sides had presented. She asked questions that cut to the heart of every claim. Kevin's lawyer argued that Sarah was unstable, that her flight from the marital home proved she was unable to make rational decisions, that the statements from friends and their pastor demonstrated a pattern of erratic behavior. Catherine argued that Kevin was a manipulator, that he had hidden assets worth nearly $300,000, that he had a documented history of abusive behavior toward previous partners, that the life insurance policy, combined with his years of documenting Sarah's mental health, suggested something darker than simple infidelity. Then Catherine called a surprise witness. Linda Price took the stand. The gallery murmured. Kevin's face went white. His lawyer leaned over to whisper urgently, but Kevin did not respond. He was staring at his mother like he had never seen her before. Mrs. Price, Catherine said, can you describe your relationship with your son? Linda sat very straight. Her hands were folded in her lap. When she spoke, her voice was steady. I love my son, Linda said, but I have enabled his behavior for too long. I watched him manipulate his father. I watched him manipulate his previous fiancée. And I watched him manipulate Sarah. Kevin's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Can you describe what you witnessed? Catherine asked. Everything Kevin is claiming about Sarah, Linda said. He did to a woman named Jennifer Hartwell 20 years ago. He made her look crazy. He turned everyone against her. When she tried to fight back, he destroyed her. She looked at her son for the first time. I have the police reports, the civil suit records, the settlement agreement that required Jennifer to sign a non-disclosure. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Kevin rose to his feet. Mom, what are you doing? The judge raised her hand. Mr. Price, sit down. Kevin sat, but his composure was cracking. His carefully constructed mask was beginning to slip. Mrs. Price, Catherine continued, why are you testifying today? Linda was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. I was too coward to leave my husband, she said. I wasted my life being afraid. But when I watched my son try to take that baby from her mother, something broke inside me. She looked at Sarah, at Lily's carrier sitting next to the defense table. I am not doing this because I like Sarah. I am doing it because I like myself even less. And this is the only way I know to start making things right. The judge called a recess. Sarah sat in the hallway, shaking with adrenaline and exhaustion. Beth held her hand. Darlene paced like a caged tiger. When court reconvened, the judge delivered her ruling. Based on the evidence presented, the judge said, I am granting full temporary custody to Mrs. Price. Mr. Price is ordered to provide complete financial disclosure within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in sanctions. Additionally, I am referring this case to the county prosecutor for potential fraud charges. Sarah did not move, did not breathe. Mr. Price will have supervised visitation twice per week until the divorce is finalized, the judge continued. But given the evidence of financial fraud, the pattern of manipulative behavior, and the testimony of his own mother, I have serious concerns about his fitness as a custodial parent. Kevin's lawyer requested a stay. The judge denied it. We are adjourned, the judge said, and she gathered her papers and left. Sarah still did not move. She could not believe it was over. Then Beth was hugging her. Darlene was crying. Catherine was shaking her hand and saying something about next steps. And across the courtroom, Kevin stared at her with pure, undiluted hatred. The charm was gone. The mask was gone. There was nothing left but the truth of who he really was. This is not over, he said quietly. You think you have won, but this is not over. Sarah looked at him, at the man she had loved, the man who had tried to destroy her, the man who had lost her. Yes, it is, she said, and she picked up her daughter's carrier and walked out of the courthouse into the cold January sunlight. 6 months later, Sarah stood at the window of her apartment in Cleveland, watching the summer rain paint patterns on the glass. Lily was asleep in the nursery, the sound of her breathing soft through the baby monitor on the kitchen counter. The apartment was small, A two-bedroom on the third floor of an old building with creaky stairs and radiators that clanged in the winter. The furniture was secondhand. The decorations were sparse. Nothing matched. It was perfect. Kevin had pled guilty to financial fraud 3 months ago. His lawyer negotiated a deal. 18 months in minimum security. Substantial restitution. A permanent mark on his record that meant his career in pharmaceutical sales was over. He had supervised visitation with Lily twice a month. He rarely used it. Once he lost, Sarah realized he lost interest. Lily was a prize he wanted to win. When she was no longer a symbol of victory, she became an obligation he did not want to fulfill. It broke Sarah's heart for her daughter. But it also confirmed what she had always suspected. Kevin had never wanted to be a father. He had wanted to own something, to control someone. When that possibility disappeared, so did his enthusiasm. The divorce was finalized in May. Sarah got the house in Columbus, which she sold. She got 60% of the marital assets that remained after Kevin's restitution payments. She got primary custody with the right to determine Lily's upbringing. She got her life back. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She checked the peephole, then smiled and opened it. Darlene swept inside carrying a casserole dish and a six-pack of beer. "Sunday dinner," Darlene announced. "I made that tuna thing you like. Also brought beer because I figured you could use it. You know I am still breastfeeding, then I will drink both of ours." Darlene set down the dish and peered at the baby monitor. "How is my grandniece?" "Sleeping. Finally, she had a rough night, takes after her mother. Stubborn even in the cradle." Sarah laughed. It felt good to laugh. It felt normal. They sat at Sarah's tiny kitchen table and ate tuna casserole and talked about nothing important. Darlene's job at the diner. Sarah's plans to go back to teaching in the fall. A new man at Darlene's church who was too good looking for his own good. "You know what I am proudest of?" Darlene asked suddenly. Sarah looked up. "What?" "Not that you left." Darlene's voice was serious now. "Leaving is hard, but lots of women leave. What I am proudest of is that you stayed gone. When he begged, when people judged, when you were scared and broke and alone. You did not go back." Sarah was quiet for a moment. The words settled into her like stones dropping into still water. "I almost did," she admitted. "So many times, but you did not. That is the whole point." They finished dinner. Darlene washed dishes while Sarah checked on Lily. When she came back, Darlene was pulling on her coat. "You know," Darlene said casually, "there is a nice man at my church who I think you would like." "Absolutely not. He works for the water department. Good benefits, decent pension." "Aunt Darlene, I am just saying, when you are ready." Sarah laughed again. "I will let you know. She will not be ready for a while." The scars Kevin left were not the kind that healed quickly. Trust was something she would have to rebuild slowly, carefully, over years. But for the first time in a long time, she believed she would be ready someday. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. Darlene left. The apartment was quiet again. Sarah stood at the window and watched the rain slow to a drizzle, then stop entirely. Sunlight broke through the clouds, painting everything gold. She thought about everything she had lost. Her marriage, her home, her community, her sense of safety. She thought about everything she had gained. Her freedom, her daughter, her self-respect. The scales did not balance. They never would. But that was not the point. The baby monitor crackled. A soft sound. Lily stirring. Sarah walked to the nursery and stood in the doorway. Her daughter was awake now, looking up at the mobile Sarah had bought at a garage sale. Plastic butterflies spinning in slow circles above the crib. "Hey, sweetheart," Sarah whispered. Lily turned her head. Her eyes, still that unfocused baby blue, seemed to find her mother's face. Sarah lifted her daughter and held her close, breathed in the scent of baby shampoo and milk, felt the warm weight of this tiny person who depended on her for everything. She thought about what she wanted Lily to know someday, what she wanted to teach her. "You are going to grow up without your father in your life much," Sarah said softly. "That breaks my heart. But you are going to grow up watching your mother survive. You are going to learn that women do not have to shrink to make men comfortable. You are going to know that walking away from something broken is not giving up. It is choosing yourself." Lily made a sound, not quite a word, not quite a cry, Just a small noise of acknowledgement. Sarah smiled. I used to think happy endings were fairy tales, she continued, that women like me did not get second chances. But I was wrong. The happy ending is not finding someone who saves you. It is becoming someone who saves yourself. She carried Lily to the window, showed her the sunlight breaking through the clouds, the city waking up after the rain. See that? Sarah said. That is our world now. Just you and me. We get to decide what happens next. Lily reached toward the light with tiny grasping fingers. Sarah held her daughter and watched the sun rise higher over Cleveland. Behind her, the casserole dish sat empty in the sink. The baby monitor hummed quietly on the counter. The apartment smelled like tuna and rain and new beginnings. She did not know what the future held. She could not predict whether Kevin would try to cause trouble, whether Linda would stay in their lives, whether she would ever trust someone enough to love again. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was not the woman Kevin married anymore. That woman had been quiet and afraid and so desperate for love that she accepted cruelty instead. The woman holding Lily now was different, stronger. Not because she never fell down, but because she kept getting back up. He spent years making me feel like I was nothing without him, Sarah said to no one. To everyone. To herself. Turns out I was everything. I just forgot for a while. The last of the rain clouds drifted away. The sky turned blue. A new day stretched out ahead of them, full of possibility. And Sarah Mitchell, holding her daughter in the golden morning light, finally felt like she was home. 1 year later, Sarah Mitchell became an advocate for survivors of financial abuse. She worked part-time at a nonprofit that helped women escape controlling relationships. She spoke at community centers and church groups and anywhere people would listen. She never remarried. Not because she was afraid, but because she discovered she liked her own company. She liked deciding what to eat for dinner. She liked watching whatever she wanted on television. She liked being alone without being lonely. Kevin was released after serving 14 months. He moved to Florida and married a woman he met online. They divorced within 2 years. Linda Price sold the family home and donated most of the proceeds to domestic violence charities. She and Sarah were not friends exactly, but they exchanged Christmas cards. Linda visited Lily on her birthday. It was complicated, as family always is. Darlene retired from the diner and moved into the apartment next to Sarah's. She claimed it was because her old building had mice. Sarah suspected it was because her aunt could not bear to be far from Lily. Beth remained Sarah's closest friend. They met for coffee every Saturday morning while Lily played with Mr. Pickles. The cat had grown fat and lazy and tolerated the toddler's attention with elderly grace. Lily Mitchell Price grew up knowing she was loved. She never knew the full truth about her father until she was 18, and by then she had already decided who she wanted to be. She graduated from law school 12 years later, specialized in family law. On the day she passed the bar exam, she called her mother. I did it, Lily said. I know, Sarah replied. I always knew you would. Because of you. Everything I am is because of you. Sarah was quiet for a moment, thinking about the woman she used to be, the woman she had become, the bridge of years and struggle and love that connected them. No, Sarah finally said. Everything you are is because of you. I just showed you what was possible. Lily was silent, then she laughed. That stubborn laugh she had inherited from Darlene. Fine, Lily said, but I am naming my first daughter Sarah. You are not even married yet. Details. They laughed together across the phone line. Mother and daughter, survivors, family, and somewhere in Cleveland, in a small apartment above a laundromat, the sun set over a city that had witnessed one woman's destruction and resurrection. The light painted everything gold. The world kept turning. Life went on.